Today, we become legends.
Today's Titan Talk was mostly Q&A, but they did mention that they're going to try and get a guest on for Friday's show, and then of course next week is going to be the OB10 showcase with Apollo, which should be exciting. But without further ado, let's jump into today's Titan Talk recap. First up, there's been a few hotfixes since the last show, which I'll put on screen for a moment here. If you want to read through them all, you can pause the video, but a few major ones were Guan Yu's cooldown reduction no longer affecting items. His 2 now has the proper displacement and cripple immunity, auto builds not showing items was fixed, and wind sprites not spawning was also fixed. They gave a quick update on the God roadmap that they mentioned in Monday's show. They're still deciding at the moment exactly how much to reveal, but they did say almost certainly not on Friday, which probably means Wednesday next week, given that Monday's show will be the OB10 reveal, so they probably won't also do the God roadmap on Monday due to time restrictions. Someone asked if they could use the skin avatars instead of the default God avatars in match, and they said probably not because it would just be a bit confusing, especially for players who aren't familiar with the skins to know immediately who they're playing against. There was a question as to why Cerberus isn't displacement immune in his 2 when a lot of similar abilities like Ares Fire are, and Kilgoon said it's most likely just for Smite 1 parity reasons, as that's always how it's worked, and they didn't want to change that for its release. Someone asked if God interactions are on the table in the future, like for example the Set and Horus dialogue in the Fountain, and they said yes, it definitely could be, though they haven't talked about it internally yet. There was a question if they are considering multiple aspects for gods, and they said yes, they built out the system in a way that intends to work with multiple aspects, but personally I would imagine they want to get aspects out for all the existing gods before they start making new ones for gods that already have them. Someone asked if they're open to adding more cancelable dashes, and they said yes, but they don't necessarily want to add it to every dash in the game or anything like that. There was a question as to why silences now affect your visuals on screen, and they said that's a change that wasn't listed in the patch notes, but it is intended to improve combat clarity and make it easier to notice that you're being CC'd. This makes sense in line with the larger CC text that was also in this patch. Someone asked if they could change health bar opacity like in Smite 1, and they said probably when they do some larger changes to health bars and nameplates, which they're looking at improving in the somewhat near future. Kilgoon also mentioned that the Q screen updates are coming along nicely, and he saw some initial concepts of the new one this morning, which is really good to hear. The Q screen right now is really awful and one of the biggest remnants of the early alpha period when the game had horrendous UI and menu screens. Someone said that hide of the Nemean Lion needs to be more clear that it's active like in Smite 1 with Thorns, and Isaiah said they agree and it's on the list for improvements. Someone asked if they would add Erosion, the anti-shield item from Smite 1, and Kilgoon said it's one of his personal favourite items, and they are looking into more anti-shield items at the moment, so it's definitely possible. There was a question about the 2-minute rule for the new deserter system where you can leave without a penalty and why it was chosen, and Kilgoon said basically that the vast majority of the time someone is gone for more than 2 minutes, they're not coming back, like 90 to 95% of the time. So they feel like it's better to just go next in most cases rather than holding people hostage in a game where 95% of the time it's just over. They did say they'd be open to making that period slightly longer though, probably more like 5 minutes or something like that. Someone asked for VGS for Pyro, and they said they can't do that because there are so many voice packs in the game for both gods and skins that they couldn't feasibly add that line to every single one, as they would have to rehire every single voice actor they've ever had just for one line. Someone asked for Siege or Slash, and they said their current focus is improving on the core modes and not adding new ones, especially due to how low the consistent player counts were for those other modes compared to Conquest, Arena, and Joust. Even Assault had significantly more players consistently than Slash, Siege, or Clash ever did, and Assault was quite a ways behind the main 3 modes in terms of player count. There was a question of if we get newer Smite 1 gods at any point soon, and they said they do have some newer ones on their long-term plan, but they feel like getting more of the core playstyles of old gods into the game is important, as well as newer gods having significantly more complicated kits that often build upon the toolkits of older gods, so it's much harder to create a newer Smite 1 god from scratch. But as they get more tech built out from older gods, they will get to them eventually. Someone asked if the player count is growing at all at the moment, and Kilgoon said the Xbox Game Pass deal did get quite a few new players in for Xbox specifically, and they also added Summer Fun Medusa to the Game Pass recently. Kilgoon said that they feel they've hit the equilibrium point, which generally happens after a game releases. They release with a spike of players, come down a bit, and then find a base of players that is maintained consistently, and they feel like they're sort of in that phase now, and could hopefully start growing the player base from there as they improve the game and move towards full release. Someone asked about Ramerica, and Kilgoon said they're well aware that people love the over-the-top Patriot skins, so they will definitely be coming back. There's a couple of them coming very soon, apparently. There was a question of what goes into the decision to give a skin prisms, and if it makes sense to give every skin prisms, and they said it's always a trade-off and opportunity cost style thing. They do take work to make, even if it's less than making a whole new skin. They do plan to do them pretty often, as the community seem to like them and they sell pretty well, but they do lose some of their specialness if every skin has them in their view. Kilgoon also mentioned that Apollo will be getting an aspect around the time of his release if everything goes well, which is cool. Someone mentioned certain skins playing their voice lines repeatedly over and over, and they said they'll look into it. Someone said that they can't report people in the post-match screen, and they said they're aware of that issue and are looking into fixes for it. There was a question of if they could do console PTS at any point, and they said they'd like to, but certification processes for consoles slow things down a lot, and with them patching every 2 weeks, it can be hard to have everything ready in time and certified by the time flash tests go live. But they do try to do console PTS for larger updates, like for example new seasons in Smite 1, and they want to do it more going forward. Someone asked when we can see the ranked rewards, and they said most likely in the OB10 showcase next week. There was a question of if starter item upgrades are coming back in the future, and they said yes at some point, but a lot of their focus right now has been on the item overhaul, so they haven't really had time for adding new items. Someone asked for a setting to adjust announcer pack volume as some are overly loud, and they said that was probably a feature in Smite 1, they think, so they should probably add that. Someone asked how they feel about the item overhaul in general, and Kilgoon said generally they feel pretty happy about it, and they think the game is better than it ever has been in regards to the items, but he did mention that tanks might be underperforming a little bit on the updates, but he did say that that could just be builds needing to adjust. And finally, there was a question about seeing your other teammate selections in the match lobby like in Smite 1, and they said they are looking into it right now and want to do that, but no ETA on when, and they did mention it could cause some performance concerns they would have to get around. But that's everything discussed on today's Titan Talk. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you want to catch my future recaps like the OB10 showcase and God roadmap reveals next week, and I'll catch you guys for another one later on. Have a great day, and peace out, you nerds.